They thought they were pulling over just another black man in a nice car. But in less than 5 minutes, that routine stop turned into a scene straight out of a movie. Sirens, flashing lights, unmarked black trucks cutting through traffic like they owned the road. And in the middle of it all, a man who never raised his voice, never broke a sweat, and still shut the whole thing down with just one move. This is the story of a traffic stop in Fayetteville, North Carolina, that went from zero to unforgettable in seconds. At first, it was one of those everyday scenes, a cop pulling someone over for a small violation. But the moment that driver rolled down his window, the air changed. And before the cop knew it, he was the one on the back foot, watching his authority melt away. If you're black in America, you know this drill all too well. Keep your hands visible, keep your tone polite, and hope you make it out without things going sideways. You don't need to be guilty of anything. Sometimes your skin color is enough for them to suspect something. But in this case, the man behind the wheel wasn't just any black man. He was an FBI agent, and that badge in his pocket, that was about to flip the whole situation upside down. Marcus grew up in Charlotte, the oldest of 3 boys. His mom was a nurse, his dad a postal worker. They weren't rich, but they made sure he and his brothers stayed out of trouble and focused on school. Marcus had always been the calm one in his family. Even when kids tried to push his buttons in high school, he'd just walk away. But his calm wasn't weakness, it was control. He learned early that in certain situations, your reaction can decide whether things get better or worse. His first run-in with police was at 17. He was walking home from basketball practice when a patrol car slowed beside him. 2 officers jumped out, saying he fit the description of someone they were looking for. They made him sit on the curb while they checked IDs. He had nothing on him except his school bag. Still, it was 30 minutes before they let him go without apology. That day stuck with him, not because of the inconvenience, but because of the look in their eyes, like they'd already decided who he was before speaking to him. That moment became part of why he joined the FBI. He wanted to be on the side of law enforcement that actually sought truth, not assumptions. He worked through college, interned at a federal office, and after years of grueling training earned his badge. It was a Wednesday in late spring, the kind of day where the heat sits on your skin, but there's still enough breeze to keep it from being unbearable. Fayetteville was moving in that lazy afterwork rhythm. You could hear the hum of traffic, the occasional burst of laughter from people gathered on porches, the faint smell of grilled meat drifting from backyards. Marcus had been in the city since early morning for a joint meeting between local police and federal agents. The agenda sounded good on paper. Talk about how to improve communication between departments, share resources, and build mutual trust. The conference room smelled of burnt coffee and dry erase markers, the air thick with polite conversation and underlying tension. For Marcus, it was work he'd done 100 times before: shake hands, trade ideas, hear promises. He kept his voice measured and his contributions focused. He wasn't the type to speak unless he had something worth saying. By the time the meeting wrapped up at 5 p.m., he was ready to leave it behind. He stepped outside into the warm evening air, the kind that wraps around you like a heavy blanket. The sun was dipping low, casting a golden haze across the city. He made his way to his black 2018 Dodge Charger, the paint catching the light in a way that made it look almost liquid. The car was more than just transportation. It was a little piece of freedom, a space where he could breathe. He slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and felt the low rumble through the steering wheel. Traffic was thick but steady. He kept the windows cracked, letting the warm air roll in. A few miles down, he ended up behind a sluggish, oversized pickup truck that seemed to take an eternity to accelerate. He glanced at his mirrors. Left lane was open enough. Without thinking much about it, he eased over. No signal, just a clean, fluid lane change. It was the kind of thing most people wouldn't even notice, but someone did. Officer Brian Daniels sat a few cars back, watching the flow of traffic with the sharp, almost predatory gaze of someone who believed he could read the road better than anyone else. 8 years on the Fayetteville police force had taught him to scan constantly, not just for violations, but for stories. Every car, every driver was a potential chapter. Daniels had joined the department after a short stint in the military. He liked structure, order, and the kind of respect that came with a uniform. In the early years, his supervisors called him by the book, the guy who would write everything down, double-check his reports, and keep his uniform spotless. But being by the book didn't mean patient. Daniels had a fuse that burned fast. If someone didn't comply quick enough, if they questioned him, if they gave him a look that felt like defiance, it was like flipping a switch. His voice would get sharper, his stance firmer, his whole presence leaning toward confrontation. People in certain neighborhoods knew his face well. In predominantly black parts of Fayetteville, his name carried a reputation. Not an official one, there were no reprimands in his file, no suspensions, but in conversations, folks would warn each other. If Daniels pulls you over, just keep your mouth shut and get it over with. He's not the type to let you off easy. Daniels told himself this wasn't bias. In his mind, he was simply experienced. He believed certain patterns repeated themselves, and he could spot them before they happened. That belief meant a young black man in a newer car with tinted windows automatically raised his attention. To him, that combination often meant trouble, drugs, weapons, warrants. So when he saw Marcus's Charger slide into the left lane without signaling, it wasn't just a minor traffic infraction in his mind. It was an opening, a thread he could pull. The car was clean, the lane change smooth, but the driver fit a profile Daniels thought he knew too well. Without hesitation, he reached for the switch on his dashboard. The cruiser's interior lit up red and blue, reflecting off the windshield as the siren whooped once, sharp and commanding. Red and blue lights filled Marcus's rear view. He let out a slow breath, flipped on his signal, and eased onto the shoulder. Engine off, window down. As Daniels approached, Marcus noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his right hand hovered close to his gun, the hard, unreadable eyes. "License and registration," Daniels said. No greeting, no explanation. Marcus handed over his license. Then, without hurrying, he placed his FBI badge holder on the dashboard. Daniels' eyes flicked down, froze. Then came that half-questioning tone, "What's this about?" "That's my ID," Marcus said. "I'm a federal agent, and before you ask, yes, I'm armed. My weapon's on my right hip, holstered." Before Daniels could decide what to do next, a sound rolled in deep, throaty engines. Marcus knew it instantly. 3 black Chevy Suburbans came in hot, blocking off the lane behind Daniels' cruiser. Doors opened. Men in dark suits, earpieces glinting, stepped out. If an FBI agent makes a call and there's even a hint of danger, backup doesn't take 5 minutes, it takes seconds. The lead agent, tall with broad shoulders, walked straight up to Daniels. "Officer, what's the problem here?" Daniels' voice faltered. Lane change without signaling." The agent's expression didn't change, and that justified approaching with your hand on your weapon. Daniels didn't answer. A couple of cars had slowed to watch. A woman in a blue sedan had her phone out, recording. She could tell something unusual was happening. "That's the FBI," she whispered to her passenger. A man walking his dog paused on the sidewalk, eyes darting between the Suburbans and the cruiser. Moments like this didn't happen often in Fayetteville. Daniels approached the Charger with that steady, rehearsed walk, slow enough to project control, quick enough to make it clear he wasn't here to chat. His sunglasses hid his eyes, but his jaw was set, the kind of rigid that comes from already deciding how this stop's gonna go. Marcus kept his hands on the wheel, fingers still, watching Daniels close the distance. He'd been through stops before, enough to know the little things mattered, where your hands are, how fast you move when you speak. Daniels leaned down toward the open window, his shadow cutting across the dashboard. "License and registration," he said flatly, no greeting, no explanation. His tone carried that clipped finality, the unspoken "let's not waste time" edge. Marcus didn't rush. He reached slowly into his jacket, pulled out his wallet and flipped it open. Instead of his driver's license, he slid out a leather badge holder and set it on the dashboard, flipping it open just enough for the gold shield and the words Federal Bureau of Investigation to catch the light. There was no edge in his tone, no raise in volume, no bite. That calm, even delivery carried more weight than any yelling could. Daniels stood there for a second too long, the sounds of traffic filling the silence between them. This was the moment where the badge flipped the script. A minute ago, Daniels had been the authority. Now, standing in the middle of the shoulder with cars whooshing by, he was looking at someone with more jurisdiction, more training, more pull than he had. And worse, Marcus was part of the same law enforcement world Daniels claimed to represent. Yes, sir," Daniels managed, clearing his throat. You didn't signal when you changed lanes." Marcus raised an eyebrow slightly, not in challenge, but in a way that made Daniels' words hang heavier in the air. "That's what this stop is about?" Marcus asked. Before Daniels could answer, the low hum of engines rolled in from behind. Daniels glanced over his shoulder. Two unmarked black Chevy Suburbans were pulling up, slow and deliberate, like they had all the time in the world. The first one stopped just far enough behind the cruiser to block part of the lane. The second pulled up alongside the first, angling slightly toward the Charger. Doors opened almost in unison, and out stepped men in plain clothes, button-downs, tactical pants, earpieces glinting in the sun. They didn't move fast. They didn't need to. Each step toward the scene was controlled, coordinated. Daniels' posture shifted. His shoulders, which had been squared in dominance minutes earlier, seemed to cave just a fraction. The radios on the suburban agents crackled softly, the only sound besides passing traffic. One of the men from the first Suburban approached Marcus's window with a nod of recognition. "Agent Wright, everything all right here?" Marcus didn't look away from Daniels. "We were just discussing a traffic violation." The agent's gaze flicked to Daniels, then back to Marcus. "Copy that. Need us to stick around?" Marcus gave the smallest shake of his head. "No, but thank you." The agents didn't crowd. They didn't speak to Daniels. They just stood nearby, their presence alone tilting the balance of the scene even further. For every driver passing by, the message was clear. This was no ordinary traffic stop. Daniels cleared his throat again, this time quieter. "Sir, I didn't realize." Marcus cut him off gently, not with anger but with that same unshakable calm. "Didn't realize what?" Daniels hesitated, words catching somewhere between his throat and his pride. "Didn't realize you were in law enforcement." "That shouldn't change how you handle a stop," Marcus replied evenly. "If I'd been just another driver, would we be having the same conversation right now?" The question hung heavy. Daniels didn't answer. Maybe he couldn't. From the outside, nothing explosive had happened. No shouting match, no physical confrontation. But anyone watching closely could see the invisible lines of authority being redrawn. A minute ago, Daniels had control. His voice was the loudest, his stance the tallest. Now his voice was quieter, his shoulders slightly angled away, his authority drowned out by the silent weight of federal backup. The real shift wasn't just about Marcus's badge. It was about presence. The way he never raised his voice. The way the agents didn't posture or threaten, just existed in the space with complete confidence. It made Daniels' earlier approach look smaller, almost overcompensating. After another beat of silence, Daniels stepped back from the window. "You're free to go, sir. Drive safe." Marcus reached for the ignition but didn't start the car yet. He looked up at Daniels, eyes steady. "Make sure you do the same." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even a warning, just a reminder, the kind that sticks with you long after the moment ends. Daniels nodded once, stiff, then turned back toward his cruiser. The agents returned to their Suburbans without a word. As Marcus pulled back into traffic, the sun had dipped lower, casting longer shadows across the road. Behind him, Daniels sat in his cruiser, watching the Charger disappear into the distance, the blue and red lights now dark. And for the first time in a long time, Daniels wasn't sure if he'd been the one running the stop, or if he'd been the one stopped. That's what hit people the hardest when this story spread. Marcus didn't need to flex. He didn't need to raise his voice or threaten. His calm and his credentials did all the work. But here's the deeper truth. Without that badge, without that backup, this could have been a completely different headline. This wasn't just one man's lucky day. It was a reminder of the gap between those with institutional power and those without it. History is full of stories where traffic stops turned deadly for black drivers over minor infractions. In 2015, Sandra Bland was stopped for failing to signal and never made it out of custody alive. Others have been pulled over for air fresheners on rearview mirrors, broken taillights, or rolling stops, and ended up dead. Marcus knew all of that. That's why he stayed calm, because even with his badge, he wasn't untouchable. And Daniels, he learned that day that the person you pull over might have more authority than you think. Marcus got home that night and sat in his driveway for a few minutes, engine off. He thought about the irony, spending the day talking about better cooperation between agencies, then having to be rescued from one of them hours later. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt lucky. Lucky that his badge was respected. Lucky that his backup was close. Lucky that things didn't escalate before they arrived. Because he knew, without all of that, he might not have been sitting in his driveway thinking about it. Watch the next video. You need to hear this.